Welcome to this self-guided tour of the Utah Inland Port. The Utah Legislature in 2018 created the Utah Inland Port, taking control of the land use of more than 1/5 of the land within Salt Lake City, as well as land in West Valley City and Magnet. In this bill, lawmakers gave almost all of the property tax revenue from this newly established port jurisdictional area to finance development by the unelected Utah Inland Port Authority, UIPA. The UIPA jurisdictional area is a whopping 16,000 acres. This land is entirely privately owned, mostly by real estate developers. We know of no other inland port in the U.S. that is built entirely on private property. This may make it more difficult for UIPA to enforce any of its promises that development within the port will utilize clean energy or be environmentally sustainable. The area north of I-80 that is targeted for most of the proposed new construction encroaches on a rich wildlife habitat of open uplands and wetlands bordering the Great Salt Lake. Within this roughly 6,000 undeveloped acreage, 152 million square feet of new warehouses are proposed to be built. Based on data from other inland ports, these warehouses will generate an estimated 67,000 diesel truck trips per day and 147,000 car trips per day. This increase in traffic will inevitably degrade our air quality. Let's start on I-80, passing the airport on our right. The new $4 billion Salt Lake International Airport is technically outside the port's jurisdiction, but it is a key part of the logistics infrastructure for the inland port. We have no data on the total amount of pollution that would be generated by the airport, but a recent study of the Los Angeles airport showed that it generated more pollution than the entire network of freeways in Los Angeles. Existing Amazon warehouses and the Amazon Fulfillment Center are along the 700 north border of the port area. 5 new warehouses have been built inside the jurisdiction and more are coming soon. Few details of UIPA are made public. The public has heard only vague promises that it will be the world's first green port. These Amazon warehouses, and the other new construction on our route, lack elements of environmental sustainability, like porous roads and parking lots, dark sky lighting, bird-safe buildings, and drought-resistant conservation landscaping. Turning south off of I-80 on 5600 West, you'll see the Stadler Rail Company. One of the first new, and few manufacturers in the port, Stadler manufactures both electric and diesel trains. Stadler intends to expand its operations onto 63 acres, just to the south of its headquarters. Stadler has no plans to use sustainable building practices as they expand. The Vobev Bottling Company opened its 1.2 million square feet of warehouses in 2021. Their application to Salt Lake City Public Utilities failed to project their water use. Vobev is using almost 2 million gallons of water per day. The City Council recently passed an ordinance limiting water consumption by new businesses to 200,000 gallons per day. 1/10 that of Vobev. The Union Pacific Intermodal Facility was built by Union Pacific on 260 acres. 53-foot shipping containers are lifted from trains to trucks, or from trucks to trains, using outdated dirty diesel equipment. Union Pacific has plans to expand its operation in this area. The Utah Inland Port Authority has agreed to construct a new transloading facility in the area immediately south of the Union Pacific rail site. The facility intends to repackage and consolidate containers for loading onto trucks in order to reduce shipping costs, though it is unclear if that will prove successful. UIPA sold $150 million in bonds in December of 2021 to pay for this transloading facility and for other projects. Bonds are to be repaid by property tax revenues from the UIPA jurisdictional area. No planning documents or specifics are publicly available. Let's pause here on 5600 West. Look to the south. And look to the west. The inland port jurisdiction continues farther than the eye can see in both directions. It extends beyond 2100 south, and west to 8000 west. Most of the area has been built up with warehouses, manufacturing and commercial businesses, and residences. The property tax differential from these properties is the core mechanism for the UIPA long-term financing. Returning to I-80, heading west. This 743-acre section is undistinguishable in the wetlands, but it is the first segment you see along I-80. This is the former Salt Lake City landfill. It is now owned by the Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, or SITLA. Of course, it contains highly toxic wastes. SITLA intends to clean it up and sell it off in parcels for development. Traveling west, you'll see the area's open lands. From 5600 west to the Great Salt Lake, these vast open lands have been undeveloped for decades, despite developers' dreams. That's because wetlands are extremely hard to build on and are protected under the Clean Water Act. A permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is required for any development. In 1991, the Great Salt Lake was designated a Western Hemispheric Shorebird Reserve Site, where more than 10 million migratory birds rely on the lake for resting, nesting and refueling during their migratory journey. They also act as important buffers for flooding, and function as natural water quality filters. Most of the new warehouses and other projects are projected to be built here, which will destroy these wetlands and natural habitats. Now, we want to point out a few landmarks that we are not visiting, but that you can see on the map. The Goggin Drain is an irrigation canal that parallels the port's northern border. It brings fresh water from the Jordan River directly into wetlands and to the Great Salt Lake. But, storm water runoff carrying the residues of oil, tar, gasoline, and trash flowing off asphalt parking lots and streets in the port may bring that polluted water into the Goggin Drain and the Great Salt Lake wetlands. The Great Salt Lake is less than 1/2 mile from the port jurisdictional boundary. Because water levels of the lake have been declining due to climate change, megadrought conditions, and upstream diversions since statehood, the exposed lake bed is contributing fine dust particles to the air which blows toward the residential areas along the Wasatch Front. This dust can include arsenic, heavy metals, fertilizers, pesticides and other pollutants that can harm human health. 25 elementary and middle schools are just outside the port jurisdictional area, to the east and south. They will be the first victims of new port development. These schools currently serve predominantly low-income and minority neighborhoods. Because of existing truck traffic, oil refineries, mining, and the airport, these schools have already seen a documented and dramatic increase in asthma, autism, birth defects, learning disabilities, and poor performance. This makes the West Side a leading example of environmental injustice. We hope this tour has given you a better understanding of why expansion of the inland port and its negative impacts on our health, on the Great Salt Lake, and on taxpayers, is not a development that our strong economy, or the growing population of Utah, needs.